The last song, a mournful blues track Eli had hoarded on a precious vinyl, crackled its final notes into the oppressive silence of Studio B. Then, the first scream. Not on the airwaves, not yet. This was close, too close. Eli's head snapped up, his sightless eyes wide, nostrils flaring as the coppery scent of old blood, the signature perfume of the Risen, suddenly intensified, cutting through the familiar dust and stale coffee of their makeshift sanctuary. Lily, huddled on a pile of old broadcast blankets in the corner, gasped. A small, choked sound that twisted Eli's insides into a knot of pure, cold fear. "Eli?" she whispered, her voice trembling like a hummingbird's wings. "Stay down, Lily Bug," he rasped, his voice rougher than usual. His hands, already in motion, swept across the control panel, fingers dancing over faders and switches with an intimacy born of countless hours spent in this booth, both before the fall and after. The station, WHCQ, the last voice, was supposed to be secure, a forgotten concrete bunker beneath a pre-fall government building. They'd been careful, so damned careful. For 6 months his broadcasts had been a fragile thread of connection in a shattered world, a voice in the darkness for anyone left to hear. Now, the darkness was clawing its way in. Another scream, closer this time, followed by a wet, tearing sound that made Eli's stomach clench. He could almost see it in his mind's eye, a grotesque tableau formed from Lily's terrified descriptions and the fragmented nightmares of survivors he'd spoken to before the lines went dead one by one. The Risen. Not fast, but relentless, and hungry, always hungry. "They're in the outer corridor," he muttered, more to himself than to Lily. His enhanced hearing, a cruel gift from the darkness that had claimed his sight years before the dead started walking, picked up the shuffling gait, the guttural moans. Dozens, maybe more. How? Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at him, but he fought it down. Lily. He had to protect Lily. She was only 8, too young for this hell, too innocent for the horrors that now constituted daily life. He'd found her cowering in the ruins of a library, clutching a picture book, her parents, gone. He'd sworn to keep her safe, a promise that felt heavier than the reinforced steel door of the studio. "Lily," he said, his voice now unnaturally calm, a trick he'd learned to soothe her, even as his own heart hammered against his ribs. "We need to go. Grab your pack, quick." He fumbled for the emergency broadcast switch, a direct line, unencrypted, raw. If this was his last broadcast, he'd make it count. His fingers found the toggle, he flipped it. The on-air light, which he couldn't see but knew was there, would be glowing crimson. He leaned towards the microphone, its metallic coolness familiar against his lips. "This is Eli, for WHCQ. If anyone is listening, they're here. The Risen. They've breached the station. Sector Gamma -7, old government block. It's overrun." His voice cracked. Damn it. He had to be stronger. For Lily. For anyone else out there. "Don't come here. I repeat, do not approach Sector Gamma -7. This might be the last voice you hear from this frequency." A thud vibrated through the floor, heavy, insistent. They were at the studio door. Lily now. He killed the broadcast, already spinning, his hand reaching for the worn leather satchel containing their meager supplies, a little food, water purifier tablets, his braille reader, and the heavy wrench he kept for protection. Lily was a shadow beside him, her small hand finding his. Her fingers were like ice. The doorframe groaned, splintering wood protesting the assault. He could smell them now, the rot and decay, a suffocating wave. There was a small maintenance hatch behind a stack of defunct reel-to-reel machines, leading to an old service tunnel. Their only chance. "This way," he urged, pulling her along, his mind racing. The wrench felt solid, reassuring in his grip. He prayed he wouldn't have to use it, not with Lily watching. The first crack appeared in the thick studio door, a dark line snaking across the wood. A decomposing hand, fingers like gnarled twigs, clawed through. Lily stifled a scream. Eli yanked her towards the hatch, his heart a frantic drum solo against the symphony of approaching doom. The world outside the studio was a death trap, but staying meant certain, gruesome undeath. As they scrambled into the narrow, stinking darkness of the tunnel, the studio door behind them finally gave way with a sickening crash. The chorus of moans swelled, triumphant. He pulled the heavy hatch cover closed, the clang echoing ominously. Trapped in the dark, with only the faint, terrified whimpers of a child and the chilling certainty that they were hunted. The wrench suddenly felt very small. His final broadcast, had anyone even heard it? Or was he just shouting into the void, another ghost in a world of them? Commander Valerius stood on the makeshift ramparts of Fort Diligence, the fortified shopping mall that now served as his seat of power, and surveyed the pre-dawn gloom. The air was cold, carrying the faint, ever-present stench of decay from the exclusion zones, his breath plumed white. Below, the cordon perimeter lights cast harsh shadows, illuminating the razor wire and the grim-faced sentries. Order, that was the watchword. The only shield against the chaos that had consumed the world. Without it, they were no better than the Risen, shambling mindlessly towards oblivion. "Report," he said, his voice devoid of warmth, a gravelly instrument of command. Sergeant Rex, a bull of a man whose scarred face seemed permanently set in a snarl, materialized from the shadows. His armor creaked softly. "Perimeter secure, Commander. Night patrols report minimal Risen activity near the cordon. 3 ferals detained trying to breach the west gate. Interrogated. Nothing of value." Rex's tone was flat, efficient. Ferals, that's what Valerius called the desperate, undocumented survivors who hadn't accepted his benevolent authority. They were a vector for disease, for disorder, a threat. "Disposition?" Valerius asked, his gaze unwavering. Rex's lips curled into something that might have been a smile if it weren't so cruel. "Processed. Standard procedure. Processed. A clean, sterile word for a brutal reality." Valerius nodded slowly. Necessary sacrifices for the greater good. The good of Fort Diligence, the last bastion of humanity. Or so he told himself, and so he drilled into his enforcers. Corporal Anna Hayes, standing stiffly at attention a few paces away, shifted her weight. Valerius's sharp ears caught the subtle rustle of her gear. He didn't turn. The girl was new, barely out of her teens when the world ended, still soft, still questioning. If her fleeting expressions during briefings were any indication, she needed to learn. They all did. The old morality was a luxury they could no longer afford. Survival demanded a harder calculus. "There was an unauthorized broadcast last night," Valerius stated, his eyes narrowing as he finally turned to face Rex, then flicked a glance at Anna. "Sector Gamma, -7. Some fool calling himself Eli. Sounded like he was being overrun. Did you pick it up?" Rex grunted. "Intercepted, Commander. Faint, but clear enough. Claimed his station was breached. Warned people away." Anna spoke, her voice surprisingly steady, though a fraction too high. "Sir, if he was warning people, perhaps he wasn't a threat. Maybe just a survivor trying to help." Valerius's gaze hardened as it settled on Anna. "Corporal Hayes," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr, "a threat is anything not under my control. An unauthorized broadcast is a beacon. It draws ferals. It draws Risen. It creates panic, false hope. It undermines order." He took a step closer, invading her personal space. Anna visibly tensed but held her ground. "This Eli operated outside our authority. He hoarded resources, a transmitter, power. He chose isolation over unity. He chose himself over the community." His words were like chips of ice. "And what happens, Corporal, when individuals prioritize themselves over the collective?" Anna swallowed. "Chaos, sir?" she offered, the answer clearly learned by rote. "Precisely," Valerius affirmed, a flicker of grim satisfaction in his eyes. "Chaos. The very thing we fight. The very thing the Risen represent. This Eli, however well-intentioned you imagine him to be, was a loose end, a disruption." He turned back to Rex. "The broadcast mentioned his station was overrun. It's likely he's dead, or Risen." "Or he escaped, sir," Rex added, his eyes glinting. "If he did, he might be weak, desperate, easy to find, and he might have useful salvage, that broadcast equipment." Valerius considered this. Resources were always scarce. Possible. Sector Gamma -7 is deep in Risen territory. Unlikely he survived if his sanctuary was breached. He paused, a new thought forming. "However, investigate. Take a squad. If he is alive, bring him in, for questioning. And any salvageable equipment. We need to know who he was, who he might have been talking to." He looked at Anna again. "Corporal Hayes, you will accompany Sergeant Rex." Consider it a learning experience. Anna's face paled slightly, but she snapped a salute. Yes, Commander. Valerius gave a curt nod. Vigilance, Sergeant. Discipline. These are the pillars of our survival. He looked out over the blighted cityscape again. Every action must serve the greater good. Every deviation must be corrected. No exceptions. This Eli chose to be a voice in the wilderness. The wilderness always claims its own, one way or another. He turned, his cloak swirling. Ensure it does, Sergeant. Or ensure he understands the benefits of our community. The implied threat hung heavy in the air. Rex grinned, a predatory, wolfish expression. Anna stared straight ahead, her young face a mask of forced composure, but inside, a cold dread was beginning to bloom. She had heard tales of Rex's investigations, learning experience, Valerius had called it. She had a sickening feeling she was about to learn far more than she wanted to know about the price of order in this new, brutal world. The service tunnel was a suffocating blackness, rank with the smell of stagnant water, rust, and something else, something sickly sweet that Eli associated with risen nesting grounds. His bare feet, toughened by months of navigating their bunker in darkness, slid on unseen slime. Lily clung to his hand, her small, ragged breaths the only sound besides the drip, drip, drip of water from the arch ceiling and the distant, terrifyingly indistinct scuffling that might have been rats, or risen, or just the settling of a dying city. He kept the heavy wrench in his other hand, a cold comfort. How far had they come? Time lost all meaning in the oppressive dark. His internal compass, usually reliable, felt skewed by panic and the winding, unfamiliar passage. Eli, Lily whimpered, her voice barely audible. I'm scared. It smells bad. I know, Lily Bug, I know. He whispered back, squeezing her hand. We just need to keep moving. Find a way up, out of these tunnels. He tried to project a confidence he didn't feel. His heightened senses, usually an advantage, were a torment here. Every rustle, every drip, every shift in the fetid air current screamed of potential danger. He could hear the distant, rhythmic thumping of machinery, perhaps one of the old city water pumps still miraculously functioning, or something far more sinister. He focused on the feel of the tunnel wall with his free hand, rough concrete, then smoother, colder brick. He was mapping it in his mind, trying to sense any intersecting passages, any shafts of air that might indicate an exit. Suddenly, a new sound, louder, closer, not the shambling gait of the risen. This was measured, heavier. Boots, multiple sets of boots. Eli froze, pulling Lily back against the tunnel wall, pressing her small body into the slight recess of a crumbling alcove. He put a finger to his lips, though she couldn't see it. She understood, her whimpers ceasing, replaced by the frantic beat of her tiny heart against his arm. Soldiers. The cadence was unmistakable. But whose? The ragtag militias that sometimes roamed the outskirts were usually less disciplined. This sounded organized. A cold dread seeped into him, colder than the damp tunnel walls. Valerius. Could his broadcast have reached Fort Diligence? Could they be looking for him? He strained his ears, trying to decipher their direction. They were moving parallel to them, in what sounded like a larger, adjacent tunnel. Voices, muffled but growing clearer. No sign of him in the main station. Place was torn apart, risen everywhere. That voice was guttural, harsh. Eli recognized it from an old pre-fall military recording he'd once salvaged, Sergeant Rex, Valerius's notorious enforcer. His blood ran cold. Commander wants the broadcaster, or what's left of him, and that gear. Spread out, check these service access points. Lily trembled violently. Eli held her tighter, his mind racing. They couldn't stay here. Rex's men would find this connecting tunnel eventually. He had to make a decision, fast. Up, or deeper. Deeper into the unknown labyrinth, or try to find an upward shaft and risk emerging into a city crawling with both Risen and Valerius's patrols. He felt along the wall. His fingers brushed against a rusted metal rung, then another, a ladder, going up. Towards what? He didn't know. But staying put was a death sentence. Lily, he breathed, his lips close to her ear. There's a ladder. We have to climb. Be very, very quiet, okay? She nodded against his arm, a small, jerky movement. He guided her hand to the first rung. It was slick with grime, but seemed to hold. I'll be right behind you. He listened intently. Rex's voice was fading slightly, but his men were still audible, their movements echoing unnervingly. A close call, too close. As Lily began her ascent into the pitch-black shaft, Eli offered a silent prayer to any god that might still be listening in this forsaken world. The metal of the rungs was cold against his palms, each upward pull an agony of suspense. What awaited them at the top? Escape, or a new kind of hell? The sounds from below, the soldiers, the distant moans of the risen, spurred him onward. There was no going back, only forward, into an even more uncertain darkness. He could hear Lily breathing hard above him. He prayed the ladder held. He prayed whatever was at the top wasn't worse than what was below. Sergeant Rex kicked open the flimsy door of a dilapidated storefront, the rotten wood exploding inward, dust plumed, thick and choking. Clear, he barked, his voice echoing in the abandoned space. Corporal Anna Hayes flinched but followed him in, her rifle held tight, knuckles white. The place was ransacked, shelves overturned, debris littering the floor. The familiar, cloying scent of old death hung in the air, though thankfully, no risen were immediately visible. This was the third building they'd searched in this godforsaken block, following the vague coordinates of the rogue broadcast. So far, nothing but decay and the ghosts of a dead city. "Anything, Corporal?" Rex growled, his eyes scanning the shadows. Anna swept her flashlight beam across the grimy counters, the cobweb-draped corners. "No, Sergeant, nothing here. No sign of recent occupation." Her voice was tight. She was trying to sound professional, detached, but the oppressive atmosphere of the ruins, coupled with Rex's brutal presence, was wearing her down. Earlier, they'd encountered a small group of ferals, a man and two women, gaunt and terrified, scavenging in the ruins of a pharmacy. Rex hadn't even bothered with questions. He'd called them risen bait and ordered his men to open fire. Anna had squeezed her trigger, her bullets thudding into the crumbling wall above their heads. A deliberate miss. She'd seen the flash of anger in Rex's eyes, but he hadn't commented, too caught up in the grim satisfaction of the easy kills his other men provided. The memory made her stomach churn. Valerius called it processing. Rex called it pest control. Anna called it murder. A scuffling sound from the back room made them both freeze. Rex grinned, a hungry look in his eyes. "Company." He gestured with his rifle. "You first, Corporal. Show me what you've learned." Anna's heart hammered. This was a test. She knew it. After her miss earlier, he was watching her. She took a deep breath, the dusty air burning her lungs, and pushed open the creaking door to the back room. It was a small storage area, piled high with mildewed boxes. Her flashlight beam landed on a figure huddled in the corner, small, emaciated, whimpering. A boy, no older than 10, his face streaked with dirt and tears. He was alone, and terrified. "Well, well, what have we here?" Rex's voice boomed from behind her. He shoved past Anna, his bulk filling the doorway. The boy shrieked and tried to scramble further into the corner, but there was nowhere to go. Just a rat, a little feral rat. Rex raised his rifle. "Sergeant, wait," Anna blurted out, stepping forward. "He's just a child. He's alone. He's no threat." Rex looked at her, his eyes cold, contemptuous. "No threat? Corporal, everything out here that ain't us is a threat, or a resource. This one," he gestured at the trembling boy with his rifle barrel, "is neither. Just another mouth to feed, another potential carrier." "We could take him back," Anna pleaded, her voice desperate. "He could be useful, clean, run errands." She knew it was a weak argument, but she had to try. The thought of Rex executing this child— "Fort Diligence is not an orphanage, Corporal," Rex sneered, "and I don't have time for sentimentality." He sighted down his rifle. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, a low moan escaping his lips. Anna felt a wave of nausea, a surge of horrified adrenaline. This was it. This was the reality of Valerius's order. This was the learning experience. She could stand by, or she could— what? Defy him? That was a death sentence. Then Mara's voice, cool and detached, cut through the tension from the doorway. "Sergeant Rex, problem?" Mara, the fort's pragmatic chief medic, leaned against the doorframe, an eyebrow arched. She had a knack for appearing at the most inopportune, or opportune, moments. Her presence was a slight reprieve. Rex, for all his bluster, showed a grudging respect, or perhaps caution, around Mara. She was one of the few who could speak to Valerius with a degree of frankness. Rex lowered his rifle slightly, scowling. "Just cleaning up, medic. Found a stray." Mara's gaze flicked to the terrified boy, then to Anna's pale face. "He looks more scared than dangerous," she observed, her tone neutral. "And Corporal Hayes looks like she's about to be sick. Perhaps your talents are better used finding this broadcaster, Sergeant, instead of terrorizing children." Rex bristled. "I'm following the commander's orders. Secure the area, neutralize threats." "And is a lone, starving child a priority threat compared to an unauthorized broadcaster with potentially valuable equipment?" Mara countered smoothly. "The commander wants results, Rex. Not target practice on juveniles." She pushed herself off the doorframe. "I'll deal with the boy. Standard quarantine protocol. You and your team continue the search. Unless you'd prefer to explain to Valerius why you were delayed." Rex glowered, caught between his sadistic impulse and Mara's irrefutable logic concerning the commander's priorities. He shot a venomous look at Anna, then at the boy. "Fine." He spat. "He's your problem now, medic. Don't let him slow us down." He turned and stalked out, barking orders at his men to move on. Anna let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her legs feeling weak. Mara stepped into the room and knelt beside the boy, her voice surprisingly gentle. "Hey there, it's okay, you're safe now." She offered him a small protein bar from her pack. The boy stared at her, then at the bar, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperate hunger. Anna watched, a knot of conflicting emotions tightening in her chest, relief, shame, and a dawning, uncomfortable respect for Mara, who had just diffused a brutal situation with calculated calm. But as Mara coaxed the boy out, Anna saw a flicker of something cold and unreadable in the medic's eyes as she glanced back at her. It wasn't kindness, it was assessment. Mara wasn't just a medic, she was a player in this grim game, and Anna felt like she'd just been moved on the board. Rex's patrol found a discarded, hastily emptied can of beans near a service grate a block further on. "Still warm," one of the troopers announced. Rex's cruel smile returned. "They can't be far," he growled, his gaze sweeping the decaying buildings. "The rat and his little pet. They won't get far." The latter opened into a cramped, dusty space that smelled of old paper and mice, a forgotten records room, judging by the collapsing shelves crammed with moldering files. Eli helped Lily through the narrow opening, then pulled himself up, wincing as his shoulder protested. He listened intently. Distant city sounds, the ever-present hum of wind through broken windows, the occasional far-off moan of a risen, but no immediate pursuit. For now, they were in the belly of an old municipal building, floors above the tunnels. Safer, perhaps, but exposed. Lily was shivering, not just from cold but from lingering terror. Are the bad men gone?" she whispered, clutching his jacket. "For now, I think so," Eli said, trying to sound reassuring. He ran his hands over her small frame, checking for injuries. "Just scrapes and bruises, thankfully. We need to find a place to rest, just for a little while." His own exhaustion was a heavy weight. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and a gnawing hunger. Their escape from the studio had cost them their meager food supplies. They navigated through darkened corridors, Eli's hand trailing along the wall, Lily, a small, silent shadow beside him. He found a small office, its door surprisingly intact. Inside, a desk, an overturned chair, and mercifully, no risen. He wedged the chair under the doorknob. "This will have to do," he murmured. He guided Lily to a corner, away from the boarded-up window. "Sit down, Bug. Try to rest." She huddled down, pulling her knees to her chest. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by their breathing. After a few minutes, Lily's small voice piped up. "Eli, why did you call the radio station the Last Voice?" Eli sat down slowly, his back against the wall, the wrench resting beside him. He tilted his head, considering her question. It had been a long time since anyone had asked him about that. "Because," he began softly, "when everything fell apart, the voices stopped. The news, the music, the people talking, just silence. And silence can be a scary thing, Lily. It can make you feel like you're the only one left." He paused, the memory of those early days, the overwhelming isolation after he'd lost his sight in a riot just before the sickness spread, still vivid and painful. "I thought, if I could put a voice back out there, even just one, Maybe it wouldn't feel so empty for someone else. Maybe it would give someone a reason to keep going. A little bit of hope, maybe. Like a lighthouse? Lily asked, her voice thoughtful. She loved his stories of the old world, of things she'd never seen, like oceans and lighthouses. Eli smiled faintly. Yeah, something like that. A little light in all the darkness. Were you scared, when you couldn't see anymore? The question was direct, innocent, but it lanced through him. Yes, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Terrified. The world, it just disappeared. Became sounds and smells and feelings. It took a long time to learn to navigate again, to not be afraid of the dark all the time. He reached out, found her small shoulder, and gave it a gentle squeeze. But you learn. You adapt. Humans are good at that, Lilybug. We have to be. My mommy and daddy, they didn't adapt, she said, her voice suddenly small and wobbly. Eli's heart ached. He pulled her closer, and she rested her head against his side. No, sweet girl, he said softly. Sometimes the world is too cruel, even for the strongest. But they loved you very much, and they'd want you to keep going. To be brave. He thought of his own lost family, a fleeting, painful image. The broadcasts weren't just for others, they were for him too. A way to fight the encroaching despair, to feel like he was doing something, anything, in a world where doing nothing meant dying. A sudden creak from the corridor outside made him tense. He put a finger to Lily's lips. They listened, hearts pounding, footsteps, not the shambling of risen, measured, stealthy. Getting closer. Eli's hand tightened on the wrench. The chair wedged under the doorknob wouldn't hold for long against a determined intruder. He cursed himself for allowing this respite, for dropping his guard even for a moment. Had Rex's men somehow tracked them this high, or was it someone else? This building, though seemingly abandoned, might not be empty. He could feel Lily trembling beside him. The footsteps stopped right outside their door. A faint scratching sound, as if someone was testing the handle. Eli held his breath. This temporary sanctuary was about to become a trap. Corporal Anna Hayes walked the dimly lit corridors of Fort Diligence's medical wing, her boots echoing hollowly. The encounter with Rex and the boy, and Mara's cool intervention, had left her deeply unsettled. She'd seen brutality before. It was unavoidable in this world, but Rex's casual cruelty towards a child, and her own near complicity, had shaken her. She needed to talk to someone, but who? Most of the enforcers were like Rex, hardened and cynical, and Valerius was an ideologue, convinced of his own righteousness. Her path led her, almost unconsciously, towards Mara's small, cluttered office cum lab. The medic was often there late, poring over salvaged medical texts or analyzing samples. The door was ajar. Anna hesitated, then knocked softly. Medic, it's Corporal Hayes. Can I have a word? Enter, Corporal. Mara's voice came, calm and unsurprised. Anna stepped inside. Mara was at her workbench, a microscope to one side, a series of labeled petri dishes on the other. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something else, something earthy and strange that Anna couldn't quite place. Mara didn't look up immediately, making a final notation in a worn ledger. To what do I owe the pleasure, Hayes? Come to check on your little stray? Anna flushed slightly. Is he all right, the boy? Malnourished, dehydrated, terrified, but alive. No thanks to Sergeant Rex. Mara said, finally turning, her gaze sharp and appraising. Or you, for that matter. You were about to let him shoot the child, weren't you? The directness of the accusation stung. I didn't know what to do, Anna stammered, shame washing over her. Rex he's dangerous. Indeed, Mara agreed, a dry note in her voice, and Valerius's orders are absolute, neutralize threats. A convenient, all-encompassing directive, wouldn't you say? She gestured to a stool. Sit, Corporal. You look like you've seen a ghost. Anna sank onto the stool, her rifle resting against her knees. I don't understand, she said, looking at Mara. Why did you help? You risked angering Rex and Valerius. Mara leaned back, a faint, enigmatic smile playing on her lips. Let's just say I have an interest in variables, unpredictable elements. A child in this world is certainly that. And perhaps, her eyes met Anna's, So are young corporals who hesitate before pulling the trigger on the defenseless. Anna felt a shiver run down her spine. Mara wasn't just observant, she was unnervingly perceptive. What are you saying? I'm saying that Valerius's order is built on a foundation of fear and brutality. It's efficient, I'll grant him that, but it's brittle. It stifles ingenuity, compassion, the very things that might actually help us rebuild something lasting. Mara picked up a scalpel, turning it over in her fingers. This Eli, the broadcaster. Valerius sees him as a threat. I see him as interesting. A voice daring to speak in the silence. What do you think he was trying to achieve, Corporal? Hope, maybe, Anna said softly, remembering Eli's last, desperate message. Warning people. Connection. Precisely. Things Valerius fears, Mara said. He wants control. Absolute control. And voices like Eli's challenge that. She paused, her gaze intense. Tell me, Hayes, when you heard that broadcast, what did you feel? Anna hesitated. I felt a little less alone for a moment, before I realized it was a warning of an attack. And when Valerius dismissed him as a loose end? I thought it was unjust, Anna admitted, the words feeling dangerous even in the relative privacy of Mara's office. He was trying to help. Mara nodded slowly. Valerius believes the ends justify the means, any means. But what if the ends themselves are flawed? What if this sanctuary we've built is just a more organized prison? She leaned forward slightly. There are others, Corporal. Others who question. Others who believe there might be a different way. A harder way, perhaps, but a more human one. Anna's heart was pounding. This was sedition, treason. Mara was treading on incredibly dangerous ground and pulling Anna with her. Who are these others? She whispered. People who remember what it was like before. People who haven't forgotten how to feel. Mara's voice was low, urgent. People who are tired of living under the shadow of men like Rex and Valerius. She held Anna's gaze. I have a network. Small, discreet. We try to help those who slip through the cracks. Get supplies to those Valerius deems unworthy. Sometimes we help people disappear. The implications were staggering. Mara wasn't just a medic. She was a rebel, operating from within the heart of Valerius's stronghold. Why are you telling me this? Anna asked, her voice barely a breath. You're putting yourself at incredible risk. Because I saw something in you today, Hayes. A flicker of doubt, a spark of conscience. Mara smiled faintly. Those are rare commodities in Fort Diligence, and valuable. I need people I can trust. People who aren't afraid to question. People who understand that sometimes the most dangerous threat isn't the Ryzen outside the walls, but the men who rule within them. She pushed a small, sealed data chip across the workbench. This contains information about Valerius, about his operations, things he wouldn't want known. Anna stared at the chip as if it were a viper. What do you want me to do with it? For now, nothing. Keep it safe. Consider it an insurance policy or an invitation. Mara's expression was serious. The choice is yours, Corporal. You can continue to follow orders, to be a cog in Valerius's machine, or you can start thinking for yourself. But know this, if you choose the latter, there's no turning back. And the path is far more dangerous than anything Rex could dream up. The weight of the unspoken offer, the potential betrayal, settled heavily on Anna. She looked at the chip, then at Mara. The medic's eyes were steady, waiting. A new kind of fear, mixed with a strange, terrifying sense of possibility, bloomed within Anna. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of Mara's equipment, a sound that suddenly seemed to pulse with secrets and a perilous, uncertain future. The scratching at the door stopped. Eli held his breath, every muscle coiled. Lily was a statue of terror beside him, her small hand gripping his arm with painful intensity. Then, a low whisper, too articulate for Arisen. I know you're in there. The one from the radio. Eli, is it? The voice was male, calm, but with an undercurrent Eli didn't like. Not Rex's gravelly bark. Someone else. Someone. More cunning? We don't want to hurt you. Or the child. We heard your broadcast. We just want to talk. Liar. Eli's mind screamed the word. In this world, no one just wanted to talk, unless they had an angle, usually a sharp one. Who are you? Eli called back, his voice carefully neutral, trying to mask the tremor he felt. Just survivors, like you. We saw the soldiers heading this way. Valerius's dogs. They're looking for you too. A pause. We can help. This building isn't safe for long. Eli considered this. If Valerius's men were indeed closing in, this stranger might be the lesser of two evils, or a scout for a different, equally dangerous group. Help how? He asked, playing for time, trying to pick up any subtle cues in the man's voice. Deceit, nervousness, genuine intent. It was hard. The man sounded practiced. There's a way out, through the sub-basement, but it's crawling with them, the Risen. We know a route, but it's better with more eyes, or, in your case, a slight, almost imperceptible hesitation, more ears. Eli bristled at the reference to his blindness but kept his tone even. And what's your price? A dry chuckle from the other side of the door. Smart. Price is, you come with us, share any supplies, and your talents. A man who can broadcast, who knows electronics. Useful. So, they weren't entirely altruistic, predictable. The alternative is waiting for Rex. I've seen what he does to people who resist. The name Rex sent a fresh jolt of fear through Eli. He pictured the man's brutal efficiency, Valerius's cold pronouncements. Compared to that, these unknowns. He glanced down where he knew Lily was. Her safety was paramount. How many of you? Eli asked. Just two of us out here. My partner Silas is watching the main stairwell. They're sweeping the lower floors. The man's voice was patient, almost soothing, too soothing. Eli made a quick calculation. Two of them, plus Silas, against him and Lily. Bad odds if it came to a fight, but staying here, waiting for Rex, worse odds. All right. Eli said, making his decision. We'll come out, but slowly. No sudden moves. The girl is with me. You try anything, and you'll deal with me. He gripped the wrench tighter. Understood, the voice replied. Sensible. Eli took a deep breath. Lily, stay right behind me. Hold on to my belt. He could feel her small fingers fumbling, then finding purchase. He slowly, carefully, removed the chair from under the doorknob. The wood scraped loudly in the tense silence. He pulled the door inward. Two figures stood in the dim corridor. One was tall and lean, with watchful eyes that seemed to absorb everything. This was the speaker. The other was shorter, broader, with a nervous energy, his gaze darting around. Neither looked like Valerius's uniformed enforcers. They wore patched, scavenged clothing. The tall one offered a thin smile. Name's Kale. This is Ben. Silas is downstairs. Eli. This is Lily, Eli said, his senses on high alert. He could smell old wood smoke on them, sweat, and something metallic. Weapons, probably. Good to meet you, Eli. Kale said. Now we need to move. Rex's hounds are getting closer. Heard them on the second floor. He gestured down the corridor, this way, and quietly. They moved like ghosts through the decaying building, Kale in the lead, then Lily, then Eli, with Ben bringing up the rear. Eli focused on the sounds, the subtle shifts in air pressure, the feel of the floor beneath his feet. Kale seemed to know the building, guiding them through a maze of collapsing offices and debris-strewn hallways. Twice, they heard the distinct sound of soldiers' boots and harsh voices from other parts of the building, forcing them to melt into shadowed alcoves, hearts pounding. Each time, Kale's directions proved accurate, skirting the danger. Eli began to feel a sliver of cautious hope. Maybe these two were genuine. They reached a heavy fire door leading to a stairwell. Kale listened intently, then nodded. Silas should be covering the entrance to the sub-basement. Let's go. The stairwell was dark, echoing, and stank of Risen. As they descended, the moans grew louder. Eli could hear them, shuffling, guttural, close. His grip on the wrench was slick with sweat. They reached the sub-basement landing. A figure detached itself from the deeper shadows. Silas. He was larger than Kale or Ben, heavily armed with a salvaged riot shotgun. He gave a curt nod. Clear for now. But there's a pack of 'em down the main passage. Agitated. We go through the service tunnels then, Kale decided. It's tight, but it'll bypass them. He looked at Eli. You ready for more tunnels, broadcaster? Before Eli could answer, a shout echoed from the stairwell above. There, I see them. Block the exits. Rex's voice. Unmistakable. And far too close. Ben cursed. Kale's eyes narrowed. Change of plans. No time for subtlety. He shoved open the sub-basement door. The stench of Risen hit them like a physical blow. At least a dozen of the grotesque figures were shambling in the wider passage ahead, drawn by the commotion. Their decaying faces turned, vacant eyes fixing on the newcomers. Moans escalated into hungry growls. Simultaneously, heavy boots thundered down the stairs behind them. Trapped, Risen in front, Rex's soldiers behind. Eli shoved Lily behind him, raising the wrench. This was it. Out of the frying pan, into the fire, and now the fire was burning from both ends. Split, Kale yelled, already firing his handgun at the nearest Risen. Silas, Ben, hold the stairs. Eli, with me. We punch through these freaks. Chaos erupted. Gunshots boomed in the enclosed space, deafening. Risen shrieked and fell, only to be replaced by more pressing forward. Eli swung the wrench blindly, connecting with something yielding, then something hard. A sickening crack. He smelled the foul breath of a Risen as it lunged, its claws raking his arm. He yelled, stumbling back, swinging again, desperately trying to keep Lily shielded. Behind him, he heard the heavier roar of Silas's shotgun, the desperate shouts of Ben, and Rex's furious commands. Don't let them escape. Shoot the broadcaster first. The air filled with smoke, the stench of gunpowder and gore. Lily was screaming, a high, terrified sound that cut through Eli's fear. He had to protect her. He had to get her out. But the Risen were a surging tide of rotting flesh and grasping hands, and Rex's men were closing the pincer. There was no escape. Only a desperate, bloody, hopeless fight in the dark. The sub-basement exploded into a maelstrom of violence. Kale's pistol barked, dropping Risen with precise shots, but they were too many. Silas's shotgun boomed, tearing bloody holes in the advancing pack, but for every one that fell, two more seemed to shamble forward from the deeper darkness. Ben, less experienced, fired wildly, his shots ricocheting off the concrete walls. Eli, with Lily cowering behind him, swung his wrench with desperate force. He felt it connect with bone, with rotting flesh. A clawed hand grabbed his arm, icy cold, impossibly strong. He roared, yanking free, the skin tearing. The stench was overwhelming. They're flanking us, Ben screamed, just as a volley of shots from the stairwell behind them sent concrete chips flying. Rex's men were pressing their advantage. Silas is down. Eli's heart plummeted. Silas, their heavy firepower, gone. Kale cursed, firing over his shoulder at the soldiers, then back at the Risen. Eli, there's a maintenance crawl space, left side by that fallen generator. Get the girl in there. Eli didn't hesitate. He shoved Lily towards where Kale indicated, his hands blindly searching for the opening. His fingers brushed against cold, rusted metal, a small hatch, barely visible in the dim emergency lights. In, Lily, now. He practically threw her through the narrow opening, then turned to face the chaos, wrench raised. A soldier burst from the stairwell, rifle leveling at Eli. Before he could fire, Kale tackled him, both crashing to the ground. Another Risen lunged at Eli, its teeth snapping inches from his face. He smashed its skull with the wrench, the impact jarring up his arm. He was bleeding from several gashes, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Then, a new sound cut through the din, a high-pitched electronic shriek, followed by a blinding flash and a concussive boom from the direction of the stairwell. The soldiers cried out in pain and confusion. Rex roared, "What in the hell was that?" Through the ringing in his ears, Eli heard a new voice, female, calm but authoritative amidst the chaos. "Enforcers, stand down. You are targeting unarmed civilians." Mara. Eli recognized her voice from somewhere, a pre-fall medical conference recording, or was his mind playing tricks? What was she doing here? With her were two figures in modified enforcer gear, but their movements were different, more defensive. One of them, smaller, faster, was laying down covering fire towards Rex's position. Anna. It had to be. "Mara, you traitorous bitch," Rex bellowed, his voice thick with fury. "You'll hang for this." More shots were exchanged, focused now between the two enforcer factions. The Risen, confused by the flashes and explosions, milled uncertainly for a moment, giving Kale the chance to scramble to his feet. He grabbed Eli's arm. "Now, while they're busy, get to the girl." Eli stumbled towards the crawlspace, Kale covering their retreat. He squeezed through the hatch just as a fresh wave of Risen, drawn by the renewed gunfire, surged into the area Kale was desperately trying to hold. He heard Kale grunt in pain. "Go," Kale yelled. "Get her out. There's a service shaft at the end of this pipe run. Leads to the old metro lines." Eli hesitated. "Kyle." "Go, damn it." Another shot, then a choked cry. Eli's stomach twisted. He couldn't leave him. But Lily. He felt her small hand grab his. "Eli, come on," she sobbed. He made the agonizing choice. He scrambled after Lily into the narrow, stinking pipe. Behind them, the sounds of the firefight intensified, then were punctuated by a sickening, wet tearing sound and a final, abruptly cut-off scream that Eli knew, with a chilling certainty, was Kale's. Ben's fate was unknown. The cost of their momentary distraction was horrifyingly high. The pipe was barely wide enough to crawl through. It reeked of rust and something far worse. Lily was ahead, her small form a faint silhouette against an even fainter glimmer of light. They crawled for what felt like an eternity, the sounds of the battle fading behind them, replaced by the drip of water and their own ragged breathing. Finally, the pipe opened into a wider shaft, a rusted ladder leading downwards. "Metro lines," Eli whispered, remembering Kale's last words. This was their only hope. As they descended, the air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. They emerged onto a silent, debris-strewn subway platform. Emergency lights flickered sporadically, casting long, dancing shadows. The silence here was different, vast and sepulchral. Are they gone?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, Bug," Eli said, his body aching, his heart heavy with Kale's sacrifice. "But we can't stay here." He listened, distant scuffling. Risen, undoubtedly, but not immediate. Then, another sound. Footsteps, hurried, coming from the tunnel entrance further down the platform. Not soldiers, lighter, faster. He tensed, pulling Lily behind a rusted kiosk. Mara appeared, her face grim, her medical bag slung across her shoulder. Anna was with her, rifle still ready, her expression a mixture of fear and fierce determination. "Eli?" Mara called softly. "Lily, are you here?" Eli stepped out. "Mara, Anna, what happened back there?" Mara's face was etched with exhaustion and sorrow. "Rex is contained, for now. We created enough chaos for you to slip away. But we lost people." Her eyes flickered with pain. "KL, Ben, Silas, they bought you this chance." She looked at Eli, her gaze intense. "Kale told me about you, your broadcasts. He believed you were important." "Important enough to die for?" Eli said, bitterness lacing his tone. "Perhaps," Mara said quietly. "He believed in something more than just survival. He believed in a voice, in truth." She took a deep breath. "Valerius will be hunting all of us now. Rex will be out for blood. Fort Diligence is no longer an option for any of us." She looked down the dark, forbidding subway tunnel. "But I know a place, an old emergency broadcast center, well hidden, shielded. It's a long shot, and dangerous to reach. But if we can get there, you can go on air again, Eli. One last time. A real broadcast. Tell the world what Valerius is. Tell them there's still a fight to be had." One last broadcast. The words echoed Kale's sacrifice, his own desperate message from the studio. It felt like a lifetime ago. He looked at Lily, her small face pale and tear-streaked, but her eyes fixed on him with a desperate hope. He thought of the silence he'd tried to fill, the darkness he'd tried to push back. Maybe KL was right. Maybe Mara was right. Maybe a voice, his voice, still mattered. "All right," Eli said, his voice hoarse but firm. "Let's go on air." The words felt heavy, fateful. He knew, deep in his bones, that this journey, this final broadcast, would demand everything he had left, and perhaps more than he could give. Commander Valerius stood before the cracked display screen in his command center, his face a mask of cold fury. The reports were fragmented, chaotic, but the core message was undeniable. Sergeant Rex, his most effective enforcer, had been ambushed, his unit scattered. The broadcaster, Eli, had escaped, and worst of all, the betrayal came from within. Medic Mara Vancroft and Corporal Anna Hayes, His own people. Traitors, he spat, the word like venom. The thought of their defiance, their blatant disregard for his authority, was a personal affront, a crack in the very foundation of order he had so painstakingly constructed. Rex is alive, Commander, a nervous adjutant reported, but wounded. He's enraged, demanding retribution. Retribution will be served, Valerius said, his voice deceptively calm, a dangerous stillness before a storm. But not by Rex's undisciplined bloodlust. This requires precision. This requires a statement. He turned from the screen, his eyes sweeping over the assembled officers. Fear was a palpable presence in the room. Good. Fear was a tool. Mara Vancroft knew our protocols, our defenses. She will have a plan. She will have allies. He remembered the network of dissenters he'd long suspected but could never fully root out. This was their doing. This broadcaster was their catalyst, or perhaps their pawn. "What are your orders, Commander?" the adjutant asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Valerius's lips curled into a semblance of a smile, devoid of any warmth. "Mobilize all available enforcer units, all of them. We will initiate a full sector sweep, starting from Gamma-7 and radiating outwards. I want every abandoned building, every sewer, every tunnel searched." This Eli is more than just a rogue voice now. He is a symbol of defiance. He, and those who aid him, are a cancer, and cancer must be excised, completely. His gaze hardened. Their target will be predictable. Mara knows of the old civil defense broadcast hub in Sector Omega. It's isolated, defensible, and has the range they'd need for any meaningful transmission. That's where they'll go. He was certain of it. Mara was pragmatic. She wouldn't lead them on a fool's errand without a clear objective. This was her endgame, and his. "Sector Omega is deep in the dead zone, sir," another officer ventured, his apprehension clear. "Heavy risen infestation will take significant losses." "Losses are acceptable in the pursuit of total security," Valerius stated, his voice like iron. "This is not just about silencing a broadcaster or punishing traitors. This is about reaffirming control. It's about demonstrating that no act of rebellion, no matter how small, will be tolerated. The people of Fort Diligence must see that there is no alternative to my order. There is no hope outside these walls, only chaos and death, or swift, brutal justice." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I will lead the primary assault team myself. Rex, if he is able, can command the cordon. I want Eli found. I want Mara and Hayes brought before me. Alive, if possible. I want to look them in the eyes as their pathetic little insurrection crumbles." A grim silence filled the command center. Valerius felt a surge of cold resolve. This was more than a manhunt. It was an ideological purge. He would burn out the rot, cauterize the wound. He would make an example so profound, so terrifying, that no one would ever dare question his authority again. The thought of Eli's voice, that insignificant, unseen man, daring to challenge him, to offer false hope to the desperate, fueled his rage. He would silence that voice forever. And in its place, there would only be his, the voice of order, the voice of survival, the only voice that mattered. Meanwhile, deep within the labyrinthine tunnels of the old metro system, Eli, Lily, Mara, and Anna moved with a grim, focused urgency. The air was thick with the smell of decay and damp earth. The only light came from Anna's flickering flashlight and Mara's chemical glow sticks, casting eerie, dancing shadows on the crumbling walls. Eli focused on the sounds, the drip of water, the scuttle of unseen creatures, the distant, ever-present moans of the risen. Lily, exhausted but resilient, clung to his hand, her small steps surprisingly steady. "How much further to this broadcast center?" Eli asked, his voice low. Every muscle ached from the crawl through the pipe and the constant tension. Kale's and Ben's deaths weighed heavily on him. Their sacrifice had bought them this slim chance. He wouldn't waste it. "Another 2 clicks through these tunnels, then up through a series of maintenance shafts," Mara replied, her voice tight with fatigue. "The entrance is well concealed. It was designed to withstand, well, almost anything. The old government was paranoid." She glanced back at Anna, who was watching their rear, rifle ready. "They'll be expecting us to head there. Valerius is no fool. He'll throw everything he has at us." Anna added, her young face pale but resolute. "He can't let a direct challenge to his authority go unanswered." She had made her choice, thrown her lot in with them. There was no fear in her eyes now, only a grim determination that mirrored Eli's own. "Then we need to be smarter," Eli said. "Faster." He thought of the broadcast equipment, of the message he needed to send. It wasn't just about exposing Valerius anymore. It was about Kale, about Lily, about all the lost voices. It was about telling anyone left listening that humanity wasn't just about survival at any cost. It was about compassion, about connection, about fighting for something more than just the next breath. What will we find when we get there? Is the equipment functional? It should be, Mara said. It was on a dedicated, shielded power source, hardened against EMP, old tech but reliable. The signal could reach across most of the eastern seaboard if the atmospheric conditions are right. She paused. But getting it powered up and broadcasting, with Valerius's forces breathing down our necks, that will be the challenge. Eli nodded. His mind was already working, picturing the layout of a broadcast studio, the feel of the controls, the hum of the transmitter. He could do it. He had to. "We're going on air," he said, his voice resonating with a newfound certainty in the oppressive darkness. One last time. The words hung in the air, a promise and a prayer. The final stand was approaching. He could feel it, a tightening in his chest, a quickening of his pulse. Whatever awaited them at that hidden station, they would face it. For Kale, for Lily. For the last, fading echo of hope in a world consumed by silence. The final ascent to the emergency broadcast center was through a series of rusted, narrow maintenance shafts, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Dust, thick as velvet, choked the air, disturbed for the first time in years. Eli, guided by Mara's hushed directions and the feel of the cold metal rungs, climbed steadily, Lily strapped to his back with a makeshift harness Anna had fashioned from webbing. The little girl was asleep, or feigning it, her small body a precious, vulnerable weight. Above them, Anna moved with a tense alertness, her flashlight beam cutting slices through the oppressive darkness. Mara brought up the rear, her presence a silent reassurance. "Almost there," Mara whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "The access hatch is just above this next landing. It'll be sealed from the inside, but I have the bypass codes. Or, at least, I hope they still work." They reached the small landing. Anna played her light on a heavy steel hatch set into the concrete ceiling. It looked formidable. While Mara fumbled with a small electronic device, pressing it against a nearly invisible keypad beside the hatch, Eli listened. The silence here was profound, different from the tunnels. It was the silence of a sealed tomb, undisturbed, but beneath it, he could feel a faint, almost imperceptible thrum, a deep vibration in the rock itself. Power. The station was alive. With a soft hiss and a clunk, the hatch seals released. Anna helped Mara push it open. Stale, cold air washed over them. "We're in," Mara breathed, a note of triumph in her voice. They scrambled into the bunker. It was a relic of a forgotten era of fear: concrete walls, heavy blast doors, utilitarian furniture. Emergency lights glowed faintly, casting the main control room in an eerie green luminescence. Banks of outdated but solid-looking equipment lined one wall, dominated by a large transmitter console. "It's intact," Eli murmured, a sense of awe and trepidation washing over him. He could smell the ozone, the faint scent of heated electronics. He ran his hands over the cool metal of the main console, his fingers recognizing the layout of faders, switches, and patch bays. It was older than his studio's gear, but the principles were the same. Power. "Main generators are on standby," Mara said, already moving towards a bank of heavy circuit breakers. "Auxiliary systems are running. We just need to bring the transmitter online." She threw a series of switches. Lights flickered, then steadied. A low hum filled the room, growing in intensity. Suddenly, Anna, who had been peering through a reinforced slit window overlooking the bunker's concealed exterior entrance, hissed, "Movement! Outside! Torches! At least a dozen, maybe more, and they're spreading out. It's Valerius, he's here." Valerius. Faster than they'd hoped. Eli's heart hammered. "How long do we have?" "Minutes, if that," Mara said grimly, her eyes fixed on the console. "Eli, can you get this thing to broadcast? I can try to hold them off at the main entrance with Anna, but we won't last long." "I can do it," Eli said, his fingers already flying across the control panel, feeling for the right connections, the sequence ingrained in his muscle memory. He had to bypass safety interlocks, reroute power, find the master frequency crystal. Lily stirred on his back. "It's okay, Bug," he whispered. "Almost done." The first heavy thuds resonated against the main blast door. Shouts from outside. "Open up. This is Commander Valerius. You are surrounded." "Anna, with me," Mara yelled, grabbing a heavy-duty flashlight that could double as a club. Anna, her face set, nodded and took up a defensive position near the door, rifle aimed. Eli worked frantically, his mind a whirlwind of circuits and signals. He could hear the attackers trying to force the door, the screech of metal on metal. This was it, his last chance. What to say? What final message could possibly cut through the despair? He thought of Cale's courage, Lily's innocence, Mara and Anna's defiance. He thought of the countless, nameless dead. The words began to form in his mind, raw, urgent. The blast door buckled inward with a deafening groan. Valerius himself stormed in, flanked by enforcers, his face a mask of triumphant fury. "It's over, broadcaster," he roared. "Your pathetic little rebellion ends now." Mara and Anna opened fire. The confined space erupted into a hell of muzzle flashes, screams, and ricocheting bullets. Eli ignored it, his entire being focused on the console. One final switch. He found it. He flipped it. A surge of power. The on-air light, unseen by him but intensely imagined, blazed to life. He grabbed the microphone, its cold metal a familiar anchor. "This is Eli," he began, his voice amplified, shaking but clear, cutting through the chaos of the firefight. "This is not WHZQ. This is a voice from the darkness." A voice Valerius tried to silence. Bullets whizzed past his head. He could smell scorching metal, blood. Mara cried out in pain. "He told you he offers order, security. He offers chains. He feeds on your fear. But there is another way." Valerius, enraged, advanced through the smoke, firing his sidearm. "Shut him up." "We are not just survivors," Eli yelled into the microphone, Anna now fighting hand-to-hand with an enforcer near him. "We are human beings. We feel, we grieve, we hope. Don't let them take that from you. Don't let them." A searing pain exploded in Eli's shoulder. He stumbled, dropping the microphone. Valerius stood over him, gun smoking, a look of pure hatred on his face. "Silence, at last," Valerius sneered. But Lily, jolted awake by the gunshot, had slipped from Eli's back. In the chaos, unnoticed, she had crawled under the console. Her small hand, remembering Eli's lessons about the importance of the main broadcast switch, reached up. She found the microphone, still live, lying on the floor. With a sob, she pulled it close. "He's not a liar." Her small, trembling voice suddenly blasted out over the airwaves, amplified 100-fold, a child's cry cutting through the static. "Eli tells the truth. Don't listen to the bad man." Valerius stared, momentarily stunned by this tiny, defiant voice. In that instant of hesitation, Mara, wounded but not broken, lunged, tackling Valerius from the side. They crashed to the floor. Anna, seeing her chance, kicked Valerius's weapon away. The remaining enforcers, their leader down, faltered. Eli, clutching his bleeding shoulder, reached for the microphone, his fingers finding Lily's. "Keep talking, Lily Bug," he gasped. "Tell them." Lily's voice, raw with grief and courage, filled the airwaves, carried on the powerful signal, a child's desperate plea for humanity in a world gone mad. "Please help us. Be kind." The battle in the bunker raged, its outcome uncertain. But out there, in the desolate ruins and hidden shelters, radios crackled to life. A new voice, a child's voice. And for a fleeting moment, the oppressive radio silence was broken by a fragile, desperate, and undeniably human sound. Whether it was enough, whether anyone would truly listen, remained suspended in the tense, crackling airwaves, a question mark hanging over a dying world. The broadcast continued, for now. The silence was yet to fall.